The role of woman as other is a paradox that holds her hostage to the separateness and sets her free through identification as other in the shattered self. Woman lacks spirituality in which she is identifiable in the divine, therefore creating spiritual otherness in patriarchal defined religions. In recent years, women have begun to search for spiritual identity, and many have found that in the form of the goddess. Connecting with the darker aspects of themselves, often associated with the dualities of life and death and sex and love, women find themselves facing and celebrating the dark goddess and the Gorgon whose gaze does not kill, but heals the broken self. The term dark goddess is loaded with Western connotations. To be dark is to be evil. The term dark does not refer to anything negative, but rather implies that which exists before the light. Dark refers to the subconscious as opposed to the conscious, the underworld rather than the above world. If the original meanings and connotations are applied, the dark goddess is an aspect of the divine female that is associated with all that is beautiful and all that is harrowing. She is the goddess of death and of life because within her she holds the power over both. Modern feminine identity is created through patriarchal constructs that suppress the divine feminine in attempts to extinguish her voice of the ancient sacred goddess. In the quest for autonomy through the feminine, recognition of the self in the dark goddess and her aspects allows the seeker to see herself as a wise woman in control of her own fate. It also allows for her to attune with her own sexuality as a primal force associated with life, death, and rebirth. Due to the separateness created through otherness, woman has become intimately involved with herself, constructed through autonomy and the recognition of herself in man. Woman sees connections to the male, but she understands that her vagina is not the lack of penis but the source of her otherness. The connection of the female self in the male may come from the religious stories of gender creation or from the knowledge that all men have been born of a woman. But the importance is in the fact that she is recognizable to herself and in herself as individual and separate in the other, and she is recognized as woman. Because she is identified as the other, she has the opportunity to construct her own self, since the other is both recognizable and unidentifiable. Women's emancipation is not bound to male identification and permission to obtain autonomy. Instead, it is bound to her acceptance of the other and the realization that in being the other, she is not less than the man, but the completion of the human. The dark goddess can be found in each culture. However, she is often hidden within patriarchal retellings of myth, but her essence exists in the suppressed power and sexuality of each woman. She is the demon Lilith, the whore Inanna, the hag Hecate, the murderous Kali, and the monstrous Medusa. Each of these goddesses, along with thousands of others, have been demonized to disenfranchise women from the divine and to suppress the great goddess. Each aspect of the great goddess has within its aspect of the woman which represents the fragmented self. Unfortunately, female sexual identity is difficult for a woman to construct because it has been removed from the genesis of its definition and may be something that constructs the female as other and denies her connection to her sexuality and spirituality. The discourse of the Medusa is essential to the discourse of the dark goddess and the otherness of woman because it is through her definition that both are given context in the human arena. Men say that there are two unrepresentable things, death and the feminine sex. That's because they need femininity to be associated with death. It is the jitters that gives them a hard-on for themselves. They need to be afraid of us. Sisu 20:48. The fear of women demands her to be the other, and without identity is that they can express the correlation of the depth of the vagina to the abyss of death. Most feminist spirituality gives a female definition to deity, and deity therefore gives the feminist a means in which to forge spiritual identity in the foundations of ancient goddess myths. Because she is the goddess of transformation, the goddess of death, the dark goddess, is worshipped in the transformation of self. The dark goddess is not limited to pagan religions or Eastern spiritualism. Instead, she can be found in many forms wherever and whenever the constructs of her own definition includes some understanding herself outside the constructed other. She can be found in many forms of spirituality that are usually associated with patriarchal religions. The woman need not give up her God to see the goddess in herself and then identify herself through the goddess. It does not have to involve calling upon the name of the goddess, but it does involve understanding that the goddess represents to the woman. She is freedom of choice and life. She is the acceptance of the body and its many mysteries. But most of all, the woman is woman defined by herself and for herself.
I'll ride on till the moon meets the sea.